Before I get into today's video, I just want to say thank you to everyone who enjoyed yesterday's video. And to reiterate, yes, it was an April Fool's joke. We're not rebounding. We love covering the entire world of cleaner, greener, safer and smarter transportation. And that includes Tesla and everyone else. Back in October 2017, Mark Royce, then Executive Vice President of Global Product Development, Purchasing and Supply Chain, and now President of General Motors, held a briefing with a handful of journalists. In that meeting, he detailed GM's future vision for the brand, specifically how electric cars would play an integral role in the General Motors of the future. Royce said at that meeting that GM would introduce 2 new electric vehicles in the next 18 months, as well as 20 new all-electric vehicles to global markets by 2023. He also added that GM's partnership with Honda would result in a fuel cell stack that would enter production in 2020, allowing the company to offer both battery electric vehicles and fuel cell electric vehicles. 5 months later, GM CEO Mary Barra spoke at the annual CERA Week Energy Conference, in which she reiterated GM's commitment to a zero-emission all-electric future. She reiterated that GM would bring 20 new models to market by 2023, and noted that even though GM was still selling and refining gasoline and diesel-engined vehicles, the future for GM most certainly lay with zero emissions, and that included making zero-emission trucks as well. Since then, there's not been a lot to see from outside of GM, at least when it comes to North American and European markets. And that's led many electric car fans, as well as some commentators, including some rather well-known electric car news sites, to call BS on GM's electric car plans. GM promised to introduce 2 new electric cars based on the Bolt EV by now. 18 months have passed. Where are they? We're being asked, suggesting GM is losing out to the competition and is no more serious about making electric cars than we were yesterday about rebranding the channel. So, is GM really serious? Or is it just yanking everyone's chain? Or is there a more subtle, less black and white reality to consider? I think there is. Certainly at face value, it's easy to assume that GM wasn't being super serious about plug-in cars. And if you're looking at General Motors with a very US-centric point of view, I'd say that yes, it does look like GM is stalling, especially if you take what GM said 18 months ago, literally. If we're a little less strict, however, 2 things become worthy of note. First, GM is launching new electric models elsewhere in the world, and second, more recent quotes from last year suggest GM's North American electric car timeline, which does include 2 electric CUVs based off of the Bolt platform, will be coming to market around 2020. China first. While GM hasn't launched any new plug-in cars in the US since that previous statement, it has done so in China. Both the Velite 6 and Baozhong E200 have been revealed in the past 18 months, and while the former has suffered delayed market launch due to battery engineering issues with battery supplier A123, the latter, a small 2-seat electric car that has an NEDC range of around 210 kilometers with a top speed of 100 kph, launched last year. But that's China, and I'm not mentioning it to prove anything one way or another. I'm mentioning it to highlight that it's very easy as consumers to get hyper-focused on our own little bit of the world and to criticise companies for not doing the things we want them to do when they're actually doing them elsewhere in the world. I'll admit, I do it sometimes, and to be frank, it doesn't make the disappointment any better knowing that new electric models are launching in some markets, but not in the one that I'm in. For a company that says it wants to be at the forefront of electric vehicle production and adoption, all of this behaviour is not particularly great. But let's also not pretend that this is a unique situation for GM to be in. It's not. We're facing a global battery shortage that appears to be getting worse, and it's harder for a so-called legacy automaker to pivot overnight to electric vehicles, at least harder than it is to set up an electric car company from scratch. As I've said before, however, companies don't invest millions of dollars in refitting production facilities if there's not a car about to enter into production. We're seeing that in the US with GM, and I believe that means the promised second electric car GM is wanting to produce in North America is imminent. And by imminent, I mean a reveal either late this year or early next, with production following 6 to 8 months after that. Need proof? Last year, GM told investors that it would bring 2 new CUVs based on the Bolt EV to market by 2020. Automakers might spin stories to the media all the time, but it's very unlikely GM would do the same to investors. So consequentially, I think we can believe that statement. Additionally, that promise was made last year after the ballpark 18-month timeline was set. I think this is probably a revision, and frankly, it seems to tie in with recent news from GM that it was investing $300 million in readying the Orin production facility for a new electric vehicle to be produced alongside the Bolt EV. Since it takes several months to ramp up and rejig a plant for a new model, that seems to tie in rather nicely to the idea that we're going to see at least one new electric vehicle from General Motors by the end of this year for the North American market. I mean, we've still got 3/4 of a year to go before 2020 rolls around, right? So yes, if we take Mark Royce's statement to a small group of journalists 18 months ago as a firm commitment, rather than a ballpark estimate, you have every single right to be frustrated. But let's not pretend that delays don't happen elsewhere, because they clearly do, a lot. We can get frustrated that these delays are happening, we can call out the automaker for shifting their timelines, and we probably should. But that doesn't mean a company isn't serious. What seems to be the issue here isn't if something is going to happen, but how we tie down timelines and how we differentiate between an individual at a company stating something and then the entire company making a formal statement that's pretty much written in stone. The real questions: at what point should we cry foul? Do we complain if a car isn't revealed to the exact date that we expect it to be produced on? Do we give the company a few extra months? Or do we try and look at the bigger picture? Leave your thoughts below. That's it. Thanks for watching. Let us know if you liked it or you didn't like it below. Scribble a comment, hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on a single episode. And if you'd like to support this channel, there are 3 ways that you can do that below, including some brand new t-shirts from our very own Erin. I'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, keep evolving.